it's such a red flag for me. And that really reveals a lot about what the organization is looking for. As I said, the fact that they don't want to spend time investing in relationships and investing in that they need quick wins and they need it now. And that I'm expected to bring my personal network immediately into this organization without them supporting me in that or giving me reasons to do that. So it's just, yeah, I think it says a lot about how people think about fundraising and how people think that there's just this network of people waiting to write a big check and you just need somebody who knows a few people with those deep pockets. Whereas that's not really what it is.
Hi, friends. Ever wondered how you could turn your big ideas into results? Together, let's reimagine a better sector, tackle systemic issues, and yes, raise some serious cash. Welcome back to The Small Nonprofit, the podcast where your passion meets action. Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about why you should never ask your fundraiser who do they know? What is the network that they can bring to your organization? I'm Maria Rio, and I'm an expert fundraiser with over 10 years of experience, and I'm on a mission to make sure that EDs get the funding they need without the stress.
And I'm Caitlin McBride. I'm a certified fundraising executive with a decade of experience. And I am here to make fundraising less chaotic and more doable for small nonprofits.
So, Caitlin, why do you think nonprofits try to suss this out with their fundraisers?
I think a little bit of this is looking for some of those quick wins and hiring somebody who might be able to bring a relationship with them if you're not actually invested in taking the time to build those relationships. And if maybe you need money right now, which is sometimes when fundraisers are brought in. What about you? What do you think?
I feel like sometimes it's boards trying to just assume that if I hire someone with networks, that means that it will immediately turn into cash for the organization. Like not really understanding how fundraising works and how you have to build those relationships with people and really find their why and align it with yours, not just know someone with money. That's not what fundraising is. The money part is actually the last and smallest part of that relationship building with that donor. So I think it's like people who don't know how to fundraise are making these decisions. But I definitely wanted to touch back on what you said about early wins. And then I think that's definitely one of the things that EDs are looking to assess, like how approximate to money are you? But I wonder if there are other thoughts that you have around what EDs are looking for when they ask that question and any kind of issues that it might reveal to the fundraiser.
Yeah, I think for me, especially when I've been in-house or job searching, if I ever got this question in an interview or saw this as part of and I cringe whenever I see this, but part of a job description, and I still see it all the time, but the fundraiser must come with their own personal network of high net worth donors. It's such a red flag for me. And that really reveals a lot about what the organization is looking for. As I said, the fact that they don't want to spend time investing in relationships and investing in that they need quick wins and they need it now. And that I'm expected to bring my personal life immediately into this organization without them supporting me in that or giving me reasons to do that. I think it says a lot. And I think, as you were saying before, it says a lot about how people think about fundraising and how people think that there's just this network of people waiting to write a big check and you just need somebody who knows a few people, knows a few people with those deep pockets. Whereas that's not really what it is. And even if you do, let's say you get somebody in the door and yes, they do have those deep personal connections. They have their best friend happens to be a millionaire. Great, wonderful. The average tenure for a fundraiser is 12 to 18 months. So their friend writes you a check. You use that money for your services. You plan your services around that coming in the future, and then they go to a new job. So it is the organization basing their fundraising on a person rather than on a mission.
Or in a strategy or in a structure. Yeah. But something that I see too is it has the same kind of flaw in logic than just focusing on like an event or a peer-to-peer initiative and not following up with building up those relationships, which you wouldn't have any of the systems to do if you're asking the fundraiser to just connect with their personal contacts. But I think not only is it super transactional and not really great for the organization because you're not building that relationship with someone else, the organization, like it's tapping into your own network again. But because it's so transactional and because you're talking to people who are all wealthy, probably white, very well connected, very well educated, X, Y, and Z, only certain types of people are going to have those connections baked into their lived experience. I certainly don't. And if that was the pre-qualification for me getting a fundraising job, I don't think I ever would have had one.
Yeah, it's very inequitable to have that as part of something that you require to for you to be part of these circles. And even I think there's inequalities baked in with the fact that only certain types of demographics are comfortable even being able to move in those circles or are invited into those circles. So if you are a fundraiser who is a person of color or minority, LGBTQ, you might not be able to even be invited into those places. For anybody who thinks about putting this into their job description, this is like one of the biggest red flags that you can put out there for experienced fundraisers.
It just literally makes me cringe because you're saying, like, you are going to be our only source of revenue. We have no other strategy. You bring your networks. It's this idea of passive income where it's like, I don't have to do anything. I don't need to put any time in understanding fundraising. Like, the fundraiser, like, you tap into your connections. And I bet that organizations that ask for that are also okay with their board members not fundraising.
Yeah, it could possibly be a board expectation. No, of course not. Also, just think of the pressure that puts on the fundraiser as well. You also have to bring in your own personal connections and your own personal relationships and put those on the line, especially when you're working in an organization that doesn't have the kind of stewardship systems and isn't able to make donors feel loved and appreciated. Like, why would I get one of my personal networks to donate to that when I can't see any structure or ways that they're going to be made to feel appreciated other than maybe like me taking them out for a coffee, which if they're my friend, I'll probably do that anyways.
One more issue that I have with this is that it conflates access to wealth and proximity to privilege with ability, which is not what fundraising is. Anyone can learn it. Anyone can do it. And you don't need to be connected. You don't need to be in those circles already. And I just don't like that mindset.
Yeah, I think we were talking in another episode about leading versus lagging metrics, and this is like almost another category. So often you judge a fundraiser's success on the amount of money that you bring in. This isn't even a metric of that success. It's just a metric of that person's own personal connections or person asking for favors. So it can conflate, as you said, it can mix up a fundraiser success with something completely different.
So now that we know what executive directors are looking to assess, connections and influence and access to wealth, what are other ways that we can find out if this person is a great fundraiser through the interview process? So, like, what would an ED have to do instead?
I think if you were looking to find somebody who is going to be a great fundraiser for you, you should really be looking at the strategies that they take to build relationships, not the relationships that they come with already, but asking them about how they build relationships, how they strengthen relationships, how they deepen them, how they can show impact and show meaning. I think I've given this recommendation to a lot of EDs who have been going through the interview process. So often I've gotten the question of what's the biggest gift you've ever gotten? And I think a better question is actually, what's the most meaningful gift you've ever gotten? And I think that says a lot about the way that a fundraiser builds relationships and shows impact and really has the skill to cultivate something that's going to last rather than something that is just like monetary and transactional. And yeah, I think that's better than asking about networks.
Yeah, I'm wondering because, like, it obviously doesn't serve the organization. They're not getting the information that they need because maybe they don't understand fundraising. And it's not serving the candidate because as soon as you hear that as an experienced fundraiser, you're running in the other direction. So I love this idea of depending on systems and not people, right? Because if your systems crumble, if you take out one person, that's a very high risk situation. In our work, we would call it a threat. They're taking all of your relationships with them.
Yeah, that's a huge threat. Fundraisers are often also brought in too late. So if you are thinking about hiring a fundraiser, you need to hire the fundraiser maybe 2 years before you actually need them. That question of bringing your networks in often comes up most of the time. We often hear it right before a client or employer says, we have a gap in our budget. It's usually them asking, how are you going to save us from this hole that we're in? And how are you going to do it quickly? And bringing in a fundraiser at that point is often too late.
Okay, let's flip this. Are there things that have been like green flags when someone asks you a question that you're like, yes, this is an organization that I could see myself working with?
I think any organization for me that's ever asked me about, yeah, things like meaningful gifts, how I deepen relationships, any organization that is talking about stewardship tactics and how I am going to demonstrate impact and storytelling and yeah, asking you about how we might find our audience and find our people and things like that. I feel like green flags. And I'm like, okay, this organization knows, they know the process. They're not looking for those magical pots of gold that are going to save them from a big mess that I can't possibly find for them. They're an organization that is going to really build relationships and deepen those. And I think we've talked about this before. The blog that I wrote and everything, there's the hunting versus farming mentality for fundraising. And I think that is for me, particularly as somebody who is a natural farmer and likes that kind of deep sustainability and cultivation, that's a big green flag when I see that an organization is aligned with that rather than, do you know a rich person who can save us? We're in trouble.
So I definitely want to jump into the hunting versus farming blog post that you did because maybe people haven't heard about it, but it was really awesome. But before we do that, if you yourself are struggling to build these relationships with your major donors and you want some support with that, we'll leave a link in the description that just has a short video of how we do it at my company. But yeah, it's always there if you need anything. Caitlin, let's get back to the hunting versus farming. What do you mean by that? And how do you apply it?
Yeah, I love that question. And actually, the first time I ever heard about hunting versus farming was in an interview with an organization. So it was a huge green flag for me because I was like, oh, this is a really interesting concept and I love this. But the hunting versus farming mentality is basically there are two types of fundraisers. We've got the hunters, so people who are going to go after those big gifts and they're really going to try to get those big donors in the door and try to do it quickly and everything. And then you have your farmers who are people who are going to take their time to really show stewardship and cultivate a deep relationship and have long-term sustainability. I think there's a lot of debate around which is the better strategy for fundraising. And I think that really misses the point that actually you do need both. You need people who are going to open the door for those big donors, make that call, get in front of them, run up to them at a gala or a networking event and put their business card in their hand. But as we all know, donor retention is one of the biggest, most important things when it comes to fundraising. You need those people to bring those folks in, the hunters, and then you need the farmers to be able to continue that relationship, show impact, show sustainability, and make sure that gift can develop and grow and continue. And I'm a natural farmer. I love that kind of depth and like long-term relationship building. That I worked a lot with BDs and other folks who had that more hunter mentality and they always want to go after the next big thing. And we work really well together because they can go and get that big thing and then I can keep it and nurture that. So we're not just going after the next shiny object. We're actually building a community, but we have people bringing in the shiny objects still.
And I love that you're saying that they work in tandem, which is really interesting because even if you do bring your network, if you're the hunter, who is the gatherer? Who is the farmer, right? Who is like providing that kind of nurtureship to that new prospective donor? Okay, I would love to leave our listeners some additional final thoughts or questions to reflect on or any actionable takeaways. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the biggest and most obvious actionable takeaway is please do not ask your fundraisers to bring their network. Instead, focus on how the fundraiser is going to create relationships and deepen relationships with the organization, not with themselves. Because even if you have somebody who's, I'm not going anywhere, I'm a lifer, I'm going to be here forever, life happens. They get taken out by something, family things happen. You have to have that continuity and that institutional relationship rather than just a one-to-one personal relationship, even if this fundraiser is the best and they're going to stay around forever and ever, or at least they plan to. So I think, yeah, really focusing on relationships that are between the mission and the donor not interpersonal relationships that are just between the fundraiser and the donor, is my biggest takeaway.
I think mine would be to hire for value alignment rather than what you perceive as access to wealth that they have. Simply because I've seen this actually go really wrong, where like you sacrifice value alignment because they're a really good fundraiser. And then the issues that causes down the line, I've seen everything from harassment, fraud, right? So you really want to make sure that you're hiring for value alignment over anything else. Of course, make sure that they're a good fundraiser, but this question doesn't necessarily assess that. So that's something that would be my kind of key takeaway. And that being said, again, if you are struggling with this yourself, feel free to click that link in the video and watch our short video that explains our secret sauce. And I hope that today you got a lot of information out of this episode because this is a question that definitely Caitlin and I are always getting asked in our role, and that sometimes people just don't know what the issues around it are. So I hope that you enjoyed this deep dive. That's it for us today. Like always, if you would like to see this video on YouTube and watch our lovely faces over there, please do. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Small Nonprofit. If you want to continue the conversation, feel free to connect with our guests directly or find me on LinkedIn. Let's keep moving money to mission and prioritizing our well-being. Bye for now.